Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Redmen TV. My name is Dan Clubb. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined once again on the channel by Mark McAdam. Mark, first off, how are you? Okay.
Yeah, good, thank you. It's hard to believe we're not even in July, but the transfer window feels like it's been in full swing. It's been amazing so far. Very busy, a lot going on. And yeah, we still got over 2 months of this, so it's not too bad, is it?
I know, strap yourselves in. Yeah, and full swing is exactly the right terminology. Certainly when it comes to Liverpool, this is uncharted territory for us. This is we're usually busy-ish, and we usually sort of dipping our toe in and out. But Liverpool we're mostly to blame for the full swing nature of the start of this window. It's fair to say it's been a chaotic summer already, but yet in the best possible way. And we're about to, at time of recording, add a potentially new confirmed signing to that as well. With Milos Kerkez, looks like he's about to become a Liverpool player. Mark, obviously you've got contacts and sources left, right, and centre all over the place, but particularly down on the south coast, particularly at Bournemouth. How did we get to this, if you like? How the negotiations play out, the state of play right now? Like, it feels as though this has been a deal in the making and sort of inevitable for some time, but we're here now. How did we get here?
It depends who you listen to. Now, Bournemouth, Liverpool, Liverpool, Bournemouth negotiations are not like normal club to club contact because your sporting director, Richard Hughes, was at Bournemouth for over 15 years. He played for the club. He was a huge part of the setup, the backroom team that went from League One to the Premier League. So therefore, you've got relationships that exist over a long period of time. Richard knows how Bournemouth operate. Bournemouth knows how Richard operate. Richard employed Bournemouth's current sporting directors, Tiago Pinto and Simon Francis. Simon Francis was his old number two. He watched him play and captain Bournemouth in the Premier League. And obviously the president, the owner, and the chief exec for Black Knight Football, who own Bournemouth, they've got a great relationship. So when it comes to negotiations, there isn't really a negotiation. It's not like, oh, we'll offer this, we'll accept this, we won't accept this, we'll go back and forth. I think it was very simple from the outset that this was the price that Bournemouth wanted. This was the price that Liverpool were willing to pay. And there wasn't really much of a gap in the middle. So therefore, it was almost a mutual respect. Now, I know on social media, this has probably played out for Liverpool fans for weeks and months and weeks. But ultimately, the negotiations only really happened about 10 days ago. It was at that point where they both went, right, we're happy now. This is what you want. This is what we want. A little bit of jostling in the middle. I think Liverpool actually ended up winning that one with Richard paying basically what he wanted to pay, which was £40 million and no add-ons, which is very unusual these days in any kind of a transfer deal. So therefore, it was quite simple in that respect. I guess the complications came a little bit with Milos having changed agents in the last 6 months or so. So that was a little factor that needed to be ironed out. But personal terms weren't ever going to be a problem. And in the end, Liverpool have got someone who potentially could be a really, really exciting dynamic left back.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch on the player in more detail in a moment, but you mentioned their sort of pre-existing relationships have made this relatively smooth sailing compared to some transfers. There can be long, drawn-out processes with sporting directors bumping heads left, right, and centre, but that was never likely to be the case in this instance, as you so rightly outlined. But yeah, it feels like that mutual respect, and again, those pre-existing relationships certainly helped grease the wheels. But when it comes to Kirk, as you said there, obviously personal terms were likely to be straightforward as well. Obviously, we've all seen now that conversation that he had with his dad in situ as well. And they spoke so highly of Richard Hughes in terms of like, obviously he brought them to Bournemouth. And it feels as though that in itself made this whole process far more easy because Milos and his dad basically said, we'll follow Richard to wherever.
Yeah, because Richard's that kind of engaging, charismatic guy who you would hang on every word. He's someone that really intimately knows Milos and his father because they'd been tracking the player for a number of years at Bournemouth before they signed him in 2023. So you probably go back 4 or 5 years worth of relationship, understanding. You know, he's watched him develop and play and learn. He's watched him transition into the Premier League. He knows his brothers. He knows his dad, who's very heavily involved with Milos's career and what he does. So therefore, you've got someone at Liverpool who really intricately knows every step of the last sort of 4 or 5 years of his life. And it makes it so much more easier for him to sign a player, knowing all of the good things, all of the pluses and positives, but also the negatives and the things that are potentially not so good or need to be worked on or need to be enhanced and developed. So when you go into the market, invariably you're trying to sign someone, but there are a lot of grey areas. Well, we think he'll adapt to the Premier League. We think he'll be like this. We know what he does with his money. We know who he spends his time with. We know how he trains. All of those things that potentially you're not quite sure about, actually Richard knows. And that makes this much less of a gamble. So it's one of those sort of perfect scenarios where there is a pre-existing relationship. You know exactly what you're getting. And you see it so many times with football where managers go to players they've already worked with and they already know, because they know exactly what they're going to get. And that's the same here for Liverpool, for Richard, for Arne, because Richard can say, look, don't worry. We know exactly what he's about and this is what he'll bring.
Yeah, it certainly feels like that as well. I was going to say, Liverpool are sort of renowned for doing their due diligence on footballers, but the background checks, all that's already done because Richard Hughes, as you mentioned, has already got all that boxed and covered for us. So it's fascinating that one of the few variables it feels like in this deal, actually, Mark, was waiting on Bournemouth to sign a replacement, which of course we now know they've done. So that does feel like a very, very minor but somewhat stumbling block in this. And Liverpool were seemingly waiting for that to be a thing before we proceeded with Kerkez.
I think there was an element of Bournemouth wanting to make sure they had someone in place. Generally, as you're seeing from Liverpool this summer, you want to get your business done nice and early so that you've got your squad, you've got all your targets in through the door, and then you can start to let people go and bring some money in at the back end. But if you get all the people you want nice and early, then that makes it a lot less stressful for everyone at the football club. Obviously, with Bournemouth's scenario, they couldn't really marry the sort of the dominoes up in the right order at the right time. In the end, they managed to get that agreement with Rennes, and then they could go and allow Milos to go. I think the stumbling block was, well, the two stumbling blocks. A was the fact that he had two agents over the last 6 months. And B, I think that because of the noise that was on social media, it made it feel like it was a lot more advanced than it actually was. And so you see things on social media, you know, deal agreed, personals agreed, and so on and so forth. It's going to happen. And you think, oh, it's going to happen. And then 3 weeks later, you're like, why is it not happening? Well, it was never actually at that stage that someone had said it was. The other thing that's really important to remember, and this seems to be forgotten in modern football transfers, a player cannot agree personal terms with a club until the two clubs have agreed, because it's called tapping up. It's illegal. It's not allowed. Now, people seem to forget that rule's in place because everyone says personals are already agreed. Well, yes, in theory they can be, but technically against the rules, so you're not allowed to. So it's one of those things where the sort of the chronological order of what's going on just went out the window a little bit. Milos was probably always going to join Liverpool. He'd always had his heart set on joining a big club, working with Richard. And let's be honest, why wouldn't you want to go to Liverpool right now? So it just was one of those things. It felt like there was a lot of delays, whereas the people that were doing the deal were quite comfortable. It was just get things done in our own time. Before we do that, that needs to be sorted. And eventually they managed to get it done.
Yeah, the stars have aligned, and like I say, he looks almost absolutely nailed on to be a Liverpool player. So we'll await official confirmation on that one. But as you said there a moment ago, in terms of the player himself and sort of what he could bring to Liverpool, I've been so impressed with him since we've had the Bournemouth, probably the standout left back last season in the Premier League. And yeah, you obviously covered the club more extensively than I would, but yeah, I assume likewise you've been remarkably impressed by what you've seen.
Yeah, he's been one of those players I've loved watching. He's really taken to the Premier League. He's got that low centre of gravity. He's robust. He gets up and down. He's got a great engine. I like his personality, which we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure. And I think he's got better. He's improved. The thing to remember, Milos joined from AZ Alkmaar for around £15 million, and he was 19 years old. He's moved over to another country. I did his very first press conference, and I was staggered at how good his English was, how well he spoke, how articulate he was. And straight away, I just got a feeling, you just got a vibe that he was a good guy. He was a special player, and immediately identified with the Bournemouth fans. They absolutely loved him. And it became obvious very quickly that he was going to be Bournemouth's first choice left back. He was the one that they'd been searching for some time. to replace that sort of Charlie Daniels hole that had been there for a little while. He's one of those players that just he gets it. He's passionate. He's honest. You will know Milos is at the training ground before you see him because you'll hear him. He is a personality and some, and you'll see that on the pitch. You know, he will relish playing at Anfield. I think it will bring the best out of him. He's still 21. He's still young. He's probably still going to make mistakes, and he's got to learn because when you're a Liverpool player, it's very different to being a Bournemouth player. The dynamics are different. You can't make mistakes. You've got to be switched on. You've got to be focused throughout the whole 90 minutes. Your delivery into the box has got to be outstanding. You know, you can't hit 5 out of 10 crosses. You've got to hit 9 out of 10. And those are the standards that he'll need to get to. And I'm pretty comfortable that he will eventually get there.
No, absolutely. Yeah, the weight of expectation, as you say, but it does feel as though he's got that personality and a mentality to embrace that, really. I've had some conversations in the past few weeks, obviously, with former teammates of his, and they speak so fondly of him, as you do there as well. And Liverpool signing another effervescent personality. I was in the company of Jamie Frimpong on Sunday, and that is a personality and a half, that was, let me tell you. But yeah, on that, Mark, you mentioned sort of the away from the pitch character that is Milos Kerkez. Tell us a little bit more about that, because obviously he's been at Bournemouth for some time now. I guess he's one of those guys, from what you're saying, just everybody warms to straight away, because on the pitch he's very heart on his sleeve. Does that sort of transcend itself into just how he is as a person?
Yeah, absolutely. He is Mr. Personality. He will be the heart and soul of the dressing room. He's a big family man. His father's very involved with him. You see him spend a lot of time with his family on social media. And in and around Bournemouth. His brothers are important to him. They play football and they're often around. And he lights up the room. And sometimes his teammates might say he lights up the room a bit too much occasionally. But I think you know what I mean by that. That's an affectionate way of saying he's a bubbly personality. He's a big character. He's always at 110%. And those kind of people are never bad. I've been lucky enough to interview him a number of times, and you always knew you were going to get a good interview. You always knew you were going to get someone passionate. You always knew he'd have a smile on his face and he would be, engaged with your chat, which is not always the case for Premier League footballers. And I'm delighted for him. I'm genuinely delighted. It would have been nice if we'd had him for a couple of years down on the South Coast and we could see that development. But the trajectory in the short space of time he was there was so sharp that it was almost obvious, like, he's really good. And there, you talk about him being the best left back in the Premier League, couple of goals, 5 assists. His numbers are really solid. Who else actually was exceptional last season in that position? So it's an area that a lot of teams need to strengthen in, but not many teams have got those options where they can go out and buy them. And he became a bit of a commodity, really. Like, he's probably one of the best. Let's go and get him. Who else is there? Well, he's all right. He might be good enough. There's a couple in Europe, but that's a gamble bringing them over, especially for a team like Liverpool, because, you can't have a project really. So you have to go and get ready-made products, and he definitely is that.
Yeah, I take it from sort of what you're saying there, then, in that case, and I agree with what it's worth, because Liverpool have, in my opinion, gone and got the best available on the market, if you like, in terms of
Yeah.
that left back, because there's a few that might move around this summer, but I think Kerkez was always the chosen one from a personal and clearly from a club perspective as well. But I take it from what you're saying, because you mentioned earlier on, like, it's a relatively daunting prospect moving to Liverpool, albeit the champions, the expectations and the pressure to come with it, potentially filling the boots of Andy Robertson, who's been exceptional since you've had the football club as well. But given what you know about him as a person, given what you've seen from him on the pitch, you are backing him to be a success with this move.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be really surprised if he didn't have an impact at Liverpool. I think the things, he has to improve his game all around. He has to understand Arne Slot's philosophy and what it's about. Ultimately, Andy Robertson, as of right now, is the Liverpool left back. He's got to earn his place in the team. There's no given right. And I'm sure Richard would have sat down and said to him and his dad, look, just because you're being bought for £40 million doesn't mean you're straight in the side. You have to earn that right. You have to develop and produce and improve and be as good as we know you can be, and then some. And I think that would have been, his mindset will be, I want to get better. I want to improve. I want to show everyone at Liverpool what I'm about, how good I can be, and be a real dominant force in the Premier League for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And just finally, now, like you said it there, really, in terms of like his ceiling and trajectory, in terms of how it's gone in this short career to date, because Has always been plain sailing, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, moves away from Hungary, his homeland, and moves to AC Milan, doesn't really work, then has to shift on to Holland. So he's had bumps in the road, if you like, but now he's fought his way, if you like, to this position. It feels like, again, the sort of character, the sort of talent clearly, and it feels as though the ceiling and the potential is still so high.
Absolutely. I think, his career so far has been symbolic of someone's who's almost really just had those setbacks. But the mark of a man is how do you respond from those setbacks? And he's had all these sort of high moments and low moments and different moments in his career, but he's still 21 years old. And to be now, an established player in the Premier League, and in theory, in 6 to 12 months' time, be an established player at Liverpool, shows you how much inner determination he has as a player. And I think that's reflected upon the way he plays the game. He's all action. He's someone that wants to get up and down. He'll chuck himself about. He'll wave his arms around. He'll want to get forward. He'll want to show that energy and that passion on the pitch. And I think Liverpool fans will fall in love with him. I may be wrong. My gut feeling is this will be a hugely successful transfer, and he'll be a star at Anfield for many years to come. I just think he has the makeup, he has the personality, and he has the ability to be someone that is really thought of very highly on Merseyside, and it could be a real special player at Liverpool for many years to come.
Mark, absolutely love that. That is the perfect way to round off this conversation. Thank you so much for your time once again. Massively appreciate you joining me. Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening as always. Take care. I'll see you soon.